All right, folks. Well, thank you so much and welcome to our first this year episode of Perspectives School Bus Fleet Electrification. We are really looking forward to hosting our megawatt member, Unique Electric Solutions today. And we're going to be joined by Joe Ambrosio. But first, I'm just going to give you all a welcome and give you a bit of background information about the Texas Electric School Bus Project for those of you who don't know us. My name is Jessica Kythen. I am the founder and executive director of TESBP, and we're also joined today by my wonderful colleague, our business development director, Michelle Montague, who will be working behind the scenes to help field questions in the chat and help anyone who needs any help. So Michelle is here, just wanted to give her a shout out. We are a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to facilitate the speedy and equitable transition to a zero-emission school bus fleet in Texas and beyond. And we do that in a variety of ways: education and outreach, technical assistance for school districts, and also through our corporate membership program, and bringing folks to the table and to the market in Texas. So we're really excited to be here today talking about one of our favorite subjects, school bus repowers. So just to tell you a little bit about the flow of the meeting today, we're going to get started with a little introduction of Joe. He's going to go through his presentation, and then at the end, there will be plenty of time for questions and answers. Feel free to save your questions until the end and raise your hand to ask your question live, but you can also drop those questions into the chat, and Michelle will help us field those towards the end. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Joe Ambrosio. He is the president and CEO of Unique Electric Solutions, and he has been active in this industry for, I guess I'll let him tell you the specifics, but we're really excited. And Joe, go ahead and take it away.
So thank you so much, Jessica. Really appreciate it. We're so excited to be a part of the Texas Electric School Bus Project. Your group has really hit the ground running for our company and for the effort to get school buses electrified throughout Texas and the nation. The connectivity that your group has with a lot of the other groups in the country is really fantastic, because at the end of the day, we really believe in different groups collaborating with each other to find out what works and what doesn't work, and you folks have really hit that on the head. So as Jessica mentioned, I've been doing this for quite some time. I'll kind of intertwine it with the background of what UES does. So I kind of call this my third wave, in the industry. Back in the 90s, it was about switching from military, and then there was the price of fuel, and now I call it the Tesla effect. And really, what's exciting about this phase is that people are really galvanized for electrification and understand what we're getting, what they're getting into. So from our perspective, it's really been a pleasure to work in the industry. And I have to say, it's really about the people. We're getting vehicles on the road. We're putting technology and enabling people to get electrification moving, but it's really about the people and the people that we're working with that are really dedicated to do this. So by way of a little background, UES was formed around doing some UPS programs that were focused on fuel cell deployments and whatnot. We came in and developed this conversion system, but very quickly we realized that the school bus industry was really hungry for something. I want everyone to take my comments from an educational perspective as much as possible. We fully believe in new vehicle deployment. There has to be a way forward, and we feel that we fill an important gap in terms of education and moving the industry forward. So we don't think it's an either or. We think it's a combined solution. So we focused on taking existing vehicles, vehicles within a certain range of life, let's say 10 years or newer, and repowering them. And we'll talk about the different components and technology that we use, but for the most part now, as time has gone on, most of the industry has really coalesced around a lot of similar technologies, battery technologies, and charging. and not so much that really, has. I think that it provides a little bit of consistency, for everybody that wants to deploy it, but really to understand that the industry is heading in a certain direction, so the choices could become a little bit simpler. And of course, people have their favorite brands and OEMs, but we're all starting to get to a place where we could make this have a strong value proposition. So in terms of our technology and what how we deploy our electric propulsion system, it's a turnkey repower for existing vehicles, and we're also doing new vehicles. I won't talk too much about that, but as an example, we have a partnership with ABC Company and Turtle Top and Coach and Equipment, where we take new shuttle bus chassis in, we make them electric, and they go into the normal production routing. In this case, we're going to be talking about school buses, of course. So we do this in two modes. One, we take the vehicle in and we do the complete repower, and in other modes, we provide a kit. And by the way, we're always looking for new partners to address certain markets that we're not involved in right now. But the idea, of course, is to take a gasoline or diesel vehicle and convert it to 100% electric. Um, we started in New York State, but now we've got programs in California, Oregon, Massachusetts, getting into New Jersey, and our model really isn't to put up brick and mortar everywhere. As I mentioned, we want to have those partnerships, and it's really about the service, so that any needed service required post deployment can be provided by those local partners as well. We have about 8 years of operation and last mile delivery and school bus operation. And we feel that we're in pretty good shape when it comes to the environments that we've worked in: extreme heat, extreme cold, salt, snow, and the like. So our system has been really well vetted. So we'll go through just some of the slides as far as some of the work that we've done. Vehicles come in, they get decontented based on the type of vehicle. There's a lot of consistency. Our sweet spot is really Class 6 through Class 7, and some of the heavy buses which go into Class 8 on the school bus side. But for the most part, no matter how you slice it, they're really truck chassis. So the consistency really helps us develop a consistent product, so that we don't have a lot of customization from one vehicle to another. Things like air conditioning and heat, wheelchair lifts, and some other specialized components provide some challenges. So we're always looking for consistency, but if the volume's there, it makes sense for us to get involved in the program. So community engagement is extremely important to us, and I'll go through some slides about some of the, work we've done here in New York City. On the left is one of our flagship programs with the Logan Bus in New York City. There was an initial ribbon cutting, for the program, and it kind of opened the door for us where other contractors came into the mix. Of course, the mayor's office and the state here in New York has really been supportive, and that's how we've branched out. But it's really about the parent groups, the student groups, the different districts that really have an interest in doing this, right? Um, uh, I talked about some of the different waves in the industry, and over the years, as this slowly crept forward, repowers weren't even in the context of discussion. And on top of that, it was just something that was so expensive and so unattainable. Most districts really just never got a chance to do anything, and some of that situation still goes on. So, as I mentioned earlier, we provide that. Filling that gap, and it's really about education, that you can take an existing vehicle, just like you do a marine vessel or an aircraft or a railway, vehicle, and extend that life. So that's really about the power plant, and the power plant doesn't have to be what it was to begin with. It could be vehicles have gone from gasoline to natural gas, and obviously we're doing electric. So that educational component is really important. Good amount of outreach, as I mentioned, demonstrations, wherever we can. Um, and we've built a very nice coalition of folks who are supportive and help spread the word for our company and for others. So in terms of some of the specifics, on the repower, for the most part, for no particular reason, we started with doing a lot of internationals, but currently we're doing Thomas vehicles, we're doing Bluebird vehicles. Some differences, here and there. Can't say that any one particular OEM has any more difficulty than another, but we've got kits developed for all the different OEs, and because they share sort of that truck chassis geometry, for the most part, there's really not a lot of differences. So just to give you a flavor, right? You decontent the vehicle, engine, transmission, exhaust, radiators, fuel tanks, lots and lots of brackets, and then the propulsion system goes in with the electric components. And what people are really surprised about is that there's really not that much of a difference in weight, especially on the diesel vehicles and even on gasoline. So there's really not much of a challenge when it comes to having to derate a vehicle because you've got batteries on it. The ICE propulsion system is substantial. It really, really is. So you tend to net out when you go to electric propulsion. Admittedly, a couple of vehicles with street side doors and curbside doors need a seat or two adjusted. And we work with the local DOT to do that. But for the most part, the internal the internal combustion system, it's got a lot of parts, so that we're really not adding. It really is not that much more weight that goes into it. So, you're taking out engines and transmissions. A lot of people ask us, what do you do with the old equipment? In some states, it's a little bit of a touchy subject, and sometimes with some of the federal agencies, that the engine, needs to be removed and destroyed. Um, I mean, I think we all have to admit that, 99% of the fleet, or maybe a little bit less, is still internal combustion. So these engines and components, could have a second life, and some fleets do take advantage of that. When we do some new vehicles, that's a little bit more attractive in terms of reusage, but it's not a slam dunk in terms of, oh, you've got this brand new engine, and you've got a million buyers for it. Shipping, storage, all those different things are an issue. But for the most part, on the school bus side of things, engines will get recycled. So I'll go through some of the slides on the retrofit itself, but for the most part, other than an older body, and depending on the year of the vehicle, sometimes you can't even tell. But these are components that we're sharing with our other OEs and suppliers on the truck and bus side. Most of our designs tend to be direct drive, so that we're not using a transmission, which increases efficiency and decreases complexity from a maintenance perspective. But for the most part, we've got a couple sizes of electric motors, direct drive into the differential. And we'll go through some of the other components, but charging, battery packs, of course, harnessing, vehicle dashboard. But we tend to mount all the energy storage systems between the rails. Electronics and harnesses will go around that. But the best part about some of these vehicles that we do, and the reaction that we get when we deliver the vehicle, is that the maintenance teams are pretty happy. They say, well, we never did a lot of, in some cases, most cases, we never did a lot of engine and transmission work. So we're going to maintain tires, brakes, suspensions, and you haven't touched that. So all the stock and all the equipment that we have is completely applicable. So great. So the blood pressure comes down, acceptance goes up, and the vehicles go into service. And I can't stress that enough, because I think with a lot of different programs, I talk about that learning curve, and we're going to get to an industry where you have a lot more options and volume on the new vehicle side. But bridging the gap with a vehicle that somebody knows and has used and has parts for is really, really a game changer when it comes to deploying the vehicle, because as most of you know on the call, it's never easy. I talk about the technology almost being the easy part, and the human factors being a little bit more difficult in terms of charging and maintenance, and sourcing components. So trying to keep the familiarity, up as much as possible is a good thing. So depending on the vehicle type, for the most part, you lift the hood, you see some of our junction enclosures, high voltage, low voltage, data acquisition systems. We tend to put batteries in most vehicles in the front, the center, and the rear. We try to maintain an even weight distribution on all the tires. Um, we tend to achieve a better weight distribution than the ICE vehicle, and you feel it in the way the vehicle drives and handles. So good feedback on the driver and operational side. A little bit more detail here. The front of the vehicle, of course, the engine gets removed. You got a tremendous amount of room to work with. We route all the high voltage lines inside the frame, and then the other side has data and control systems. So for the most part, all your high voltage systems are contained between the rails, and that increases safety for impact and whatnot. We've been through a number of DOTs in the field, and that's sort of what rules our design and all the efforts that we put in to convert these vehicles and come up with our configurations, because in this industry, they're the final arbiter. The DOT, whether it's state-based or county-based, we work with them on an individual basis, and we tweak the design, if you will, based on that feedback, and then that sort of feeds the entire design process. So vehicles in California are getting the best advice from New York, and vice versa. So we pride ourselves in closing the loop with not only the users, FMVSS, all the federal and state regulations, but local DOT. And I don't want to speak out of school, but a lot of DOTs have some different opinions on how they implement some of this technology, and it takes a little bit of extra work, but we're fine with that because every iteration just makes the product better. A little bit more detail on some of the components. On the trucks and buses, you'll see in the top left, the dashboard gets replaced completely. So all your normal gauges are there for air pressure and um, volts and all your lower voltage systems that the driver is used to, a speedometer and things like that. And we provide an energy gauge, like a power gauge, like most electric vehicles have, so that we could start to affect driver behavior, so that folks can maximize range and understand when they're regenning and using high current and whatnot. We use a truck-based forward-reverse neutral switch that a lot of you might be familiar with in the lower left. Our battery technology is lithium iron phosphate. There's a couple different suppliers that are popular in the industry right now. We use a prismatic cell. So it's called, some people call it the safer lithium, and not to say that NMC is a bad battery. It's just based on the application and how you want to deploy it. So for us, lithium iron phosphate works well from a value proposition perspective, charging, temperature ranges and whatnot, and it's served us well in 8 years. Talked a little bit about the junction enclosures. These are our own designs. We tend to be a little bit more conservative than most. A good amount of contactors in the system, in the battery packs, in our control systems, and our junction boxes. So there's a little bit of double redundancy in terms of, when you say the vehicle is off, it's really off. So whether it's a key off or an emergency or the 12-volt cutoff on the side of the vehicle, or if you pull one of the high voltage lines, which is called HVIL, a high voltage interlock, there's many contactors or relays that open in the system to make it safe. We try to customize some of the vehicles when we have a chance to advertise, of course. And it's really not about the press, if you will. It's just really exciting to see the students and parent groups just waiting for these vehicles and being glad that they're on an electric vehicle. And a lot of the other manufacturers are painting bumpers and rims green, and we think it's great. So just some of the other details. So we talked about repowering, on the truck and bus side. For the most part, we're all using the same components, so our vehicles drive the same way as some of the newer vehicles. Of course, when you're able to start with a clean sheet of paper in terms of some of the fit and finish on the driver cockpit and things like that, of course, are improving. But we provide telematics and preconditioning for the vehicle, um, modern display, and to really try to enhance that experience. We're also deploying some camera systems and whatnot as well. Um, of course, from a cost perspective, depending on volumes, I mean, definitely to start off with, you're probably a little bit less than half of some of the new vehicles that are out there. Um, and I've mentioned, some of our sourcing. We're well established in a certain number of states for incentives, and we're working with others and also on our IRS tax credits. So on the charging side, I won't get into too much of the detail in terms of UES trying to sell infrastructure, but we do. And it's really to try to reduce stress. I mean, it's a bit of a profit center, but there's just uh, some analysis paralysis that we get involved with some operators that they're very concerned. And there's no issue with a long-term plan, but we provide a number of options where somebody can get started really quickly with a with a level 2 charger and deploy 3 or 4 vehicles. And of course, we have the ability to do much larger scale deployments. We've got national partners to be able to do that. But um, only on the fast charger side, we've run into some issues on communication. For the most part, we try to de-risk that as early as possible so we know what we're getting into. But I'm sure everyone has their war stories, here on the call. But our background is in power electronics and battery management systems. So we have an offering from a number of different suppliers to be able to bring that stress level down. Let's get vehicles on the road. And admittedly, we've been involved in some programs where the vehicles just don't run enough, and it's because of that mismatch, on the charger side, because some of that homework hasn't been done, ahead of time. And I've probably said this more than once, and we're not trying to knock anybody, but sometimes there's a little bit too much control around this. And from our perspective, if there's a handshake between the vehicle and the vehicle should charge and be ready for service in the morning. And that's kind of our litmus test. Uh, any other, controls or complexity around that is understandable, let's say on a much larger scale. But these initial vehicle deployments are just so important in terms of trying to find out what you don't know. And we talk about that a lot. It's not about, oh, well, you've got all the ideas in the world, but a lot of times we know what not to do, but we also want to help you find out what you don't know. And going back to your operators and your training so you can focus in on those areas. This is just an example of process that we go through. Um, some of them may seem obvious, but with the first one, not every application is good for electrification, and sometimes that's a difficult message to relay. But we'd rather talk about that ahead of time instead of finding out afterwards. And sometimes the mitigating factor is more vehicles or more charging. But that first step is really important before any discussion of sale is is really undertaken. Vehicle assessment, of course, you could have vehicles in the Southwest that are older but are in fine condition. Vehicles in the Northeast at the same age that are just not going to be worthwhile on the to take on. So that vehicle assessment is important. Parts availability. We look at funding. We pride ourselves in developing a lot of funding on the R&D side. That's kind of where we came from. So whether it's a demonstration program or just a straight incentive program, we help connect those dots and write grants and help fleets through that application process. We do the conversion, on our own or with some partners. Talked a little bit about the charging side of things, and of course, vehicle delivery and training. This really is there's a lot of variation between the different fleets that we work with. Some want to be extensively trained. and they take this on their own. Some want to be extensively trained, and we still do a lot of the work, which is fine. First and foremost, we always feel that first responders need to be in the mix. So we provide first responder cards, first responder trainings, um, uh, meet and greets, with them. We always say we never want the first time for the first responder to see this vehicle is in an emergency. So we think that that work is important up front. And then support is needed. And we've seen an evolution there, whether it's with Last Mile or with School Bus, where um, there's always an apprehension and concern, a good one, on high voltage and whatnot. But as the fleet maintenance folks get more and more comfortable, they start to wade in on 12 volt issues or uh, your more simple type items, and then we grow from there. So that's exciting to us because we want to focus on building propulsion systems, and we would love the industry to embrace this as they normally do with an ICE vehicle, but we understand it takes time, but it is happening. And then I mentioned, some of this, but the experience that comes to the school bus is based on a lot of different types of vocations, which bring a lot more variability to those human factors that I talk about, but it's all experience. And whether it's last mile or shuttle buses or Class 8, I think a lot of we have an engineering group that does a lot of advanced programs, fuel cell powered 1 megawatt tugboats, and different. They're doing oil rig electrification. So all that experience comes to bear on the school bus program as well. And of course, we couldn't do this with a lot of our partners. This is just a small sampling of some of the groups we work with. I mentioned ABC has been a strong partner over the years and continues to do so. But of course, the CalStarts and NYSERDAs and CTEs who provided a lot of the sort of the risk mitigation, in the beginning. Can't do it, couldn't have done it without them, and they continue to do that. And we really appreciate it because someone's got to lean forward and help de-risk some of this and provide some financial incentives to everybody. So we'd like to say that we're on the shoulders of giants from that perspective. And this goes to the community colleges and the training programs that we get involved with, all the way up to, as I mentioned, funding and getting hardware on the road. So that's pretty much it from the presentation perspective. And as Jessica mentioned, happy to take questions. And I'll just say it again. It's can't say we know everything here, but happy to talk about any school bus topic. Doesn't have to be about repowers. I spent 12 years as Clean Cities board member, chair, vice chair. So we've seen a lot of jitters and all alternative fuels, and want to help as much as possible because the rising tide floats all boats, right?
Definitely. Thank you so much, Joe. That was an awesome presentation, and I loved all of the pictures that you showed of the process. That was wonderful. And definitely thank you for putting your contact information up there as well. One of the things that our organization prides ourselves on is having this network of connectivity. So if people have questions, they can reach directly out to the person who is most likely to have the answers. So with that, we have already had some questions in the chat, and so I'll go through those and then we'll open it up to the floor as well. The first question was, is Texas offering any state grants or incentives for repowering school buses? And the answer is actually yes. All of the Texas state funding programs for school bus electrification allow for repowers. Those programs are administered by the the TCEQ, Texas Center for Environmental Quality. Sorry, I always forget what the C is. Anyway, really interesting stuff. So not all of those are open right now, but they do open typically yearly or regularly. And the one that is open right now is the Texas Volkswagen Emissions Mitigation Program. And that will be open until the end of the summer, August of this year. And so we can work on that. We have already sort of worked with the TechSvent program and applications some, so it's something that we're fairly familiar with. If anyone has questions, please feel free to reach out. The next question, which I will field to you, Joe, is thoughts on an electric e-axle to further simplify the kit.
We completely agree. We think it's a great technology. It's a little expensive right now, and adds a good amount of cost to the system. So we're interested. We're buyers. When the cost gets to the right place. One thing I will say is that right now we've got a strong partnership with Nidec, one of the biggest electric motor manufacturers in the world, and we use an off-the-shelf motor. I mean, it's actually a bullet train motor, believe it or not. So, existing product, great price, worldwide service, pretty much get it fixed anywhere. And because of our experience and what we've been through with other deployments over the years, if some customers want the ability to work on these vehicles on their own long term, and we don't want to get in the way of that. So some of the earlier technologies are kind of problematic, when it comes there. So we don't think we're really giving up much in terms of space and efficiency at this point, but the axles are a great solution, and very much anticipate the deployment and the cost coming down.
Awesome. This is something that we can have you field, and I also have some answers to this as well, but more non-IRS incentives that you're involved with to finance repowers.
So right now for municipalities, if the program has to be substantial, 10 vehicles or more, we've got a couple of different groups that'll come in and help finance those programs. And what it is, it's sort of putting together state incentives, tax incentives, federal incentives, and coming up with a package that makes sense. At the end of the day, it is financing, but based on the value proposition and the amount of money that you can get as a foundation to offset the total cost, it can work. So it's a case by case basis, and we do that. So there's not really one answer for. I mean, New York is the easiest, at this point, right? Almost $170,000, off a repower if you're in a disadvantaged location. Texas is a little bit less, and then California is a little bit less, but there are other things that you could plug into that, and we work with you to try to figure that out.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that this is something that is developing. And so, as we move into this idea and it scales, we hope that there are people who pick up the pieces and begin offering, these creative ways to finance repowers and also fleet electrification in general. So I feel like it's an opportunity as well for people who'd like to get involved or spread out their involvement in this industry. So the next question is, can you talk a little bit more about where the charging stations are located?
What if they're talking about the charge port on the vehicle or the station itself, or?
I think the station itself.
Well, I mean, this is also an interesting perspective. Some folks have taken some different directions. Some folks, want to put a 90, 100 kilowatt charger in every parking spot. We tend to think that's a little bit expensive, but it does provide maximum flexibility, right, in terms of charging anytime based on the duty cycle of the vehicle. And it's become a challenge up here in the Northeast because if you want to be 100% electric with electric heat, you're a little bit challenged, on the range side. So that higher powered is a benefit. But for the most part, based on upfront costs and whatnot, level 2, 19.2 kilowatts has been a pretty good solution based on most of the routes where you're parked for 9, 10, 12 hours, and then you're doing routes, during the day, with heat, probably around that 100-mile range, or so. We've got a mix of buses. It's always interesting to us what has air conditioning, what doesn't have air conditioning. But level 2, whether it's head-in or backing in parking, some of the other challenges have been about destruction of the charging infrastructure, driving over the charger heads or backing into the EVSE itself. So the location of where the charger is important, but a lot of times you just don't have a choice. So there's no magic answer, but we always just try to put the charger head in a place where the driver will see it, so they remember that it's plugged in, and they remember to plug it in when they get out. And then with vehicle with air brakes, it's really hard to prevent the vehicle from not moving if someone takes off the airlock. So that's why, visibility is really important. But, things happen. And this goes back to what I was saying before about the human factors. We've got locations where you got 5, 6 buses, and the propulsion system's fine. They just can't charge them. And that's no good.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'm just going to use this opportunity to shout out El Paso Electric, which is a municipal electric utility out in West Texas. And this is just piggybacking on the utility of the level 2 chargers. For instance, they offer a very excellent time of use rate for electric school bus charging between midnight and 8 a.m. that makes the economics of these propositions even better. So just kind of highlighting how all of this can come together to everyone's benefit. Okay, the next one is, how long does it take to repower a ICE Type C bus?
Uh, right now, if the vehicle's in-house, we're just over a week. The issue is just getting the parts in, vehicle in, timing and whatnot. And admittedly to the industry, I guess, this is a little bit of a challenge too. I mentioned that we've got, folks stepping in for financing or whatnot, but we learned pretty quickly when we got into these in a big way, we became more of a bank than a technology company. So some of those challenges have, created some time lags and things like that. But for the most part now, we continue to improve, our cycle time. So all the parts are in-house, vehicles and in-house. It's an existing design. The first one of anything takes a little bit longer. That usually can go 2, 3 weeks. But if it's an existing design, less than a week, we can turn it around.
Right. Next question. At present, how many repowers have you completed? And of these, how many total miles on these conversions? And you might want to break it up into the types, but that's the question.
Yeah, we get asked this question a lot. With all vehicles, trucks and buses included, we're nearing 100 now. Miles are tough because we operate in congested areas, so it's really more about the hours. Last mile sitting in front of buildings, school buses sitting in traffic. I'm not sure if we hit that million-mile mark. A lot of companies say we're a million miles, 2 million miles, but for us, really, it's about that day-to-day experience. The hours of vehicles are on the road, and the uptime, where vehicles are on the road doing their job, and not sitting in a parking lot or waiting for service. So we've got a great record there.
Awesome. Next question is, does UES install an external heater? If so, electric or fuel-based?
We do both. We do both. So some of the northeastern states still allow fuel-fired heaters, and other operators just want all electric, or they require all electric. So either way, it doesn't matter to us. You take about a 10 to 15% hit in range, with all electric. So for us, especially in the beginning, it was about not so much about the philosophy of whether you're 100% electric or not, is whether you can do the program or not. And in some cases, if you didn't have that fuel fire heated on board, the program's just not going to work. And we still feel it's a bridge, in some cases, because there's just so many other educational components that come into play that you just have to get through. You don't know what you don't know, and sometimes having that fuel-fired heater gets the program out of the gate, and then you probably could eliminate it, later on down the line with more charging or different usage patterns. But we do either one.
Right. The next question is, do you have a list of charger OEMs that you know have been used on your repowers? That's the first part of the question. So I guess I'll just do that first part of the question.
Yeah, we do. If anyone has a specific question, just shoot me an email and I can give you a yes or no. In some cases we just did some testing or we try to do long trips, with our vehicles, either in northern New York State, DC, and we use a lot of public charging. So not only are we going to an event, but we're doing testing along the way. So for the most part, there's been no issue whatsoever with level 2. It's really some of the level 3 that has presented some challenges, but for the most part, we've overcome them.
Great. And then the next part of that question is, are there any reasons why you wouldn't repower a vehicle, like age of vehicle, issues found with chassis, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes, yes. We've become a little bit more, selective as time has gone on. But you have to look at the life of the vehicle. What's left. Every state is different. I mean, we've got municipalities in New York that, uh, you've got to turn the bus over in 3 years, and others that you can go 20 years. So there's those constraints. But in terms of the rest of the vehicle, suspension, seats, glass. I mean, these don't have to be, really big expenses, but if either there's no appetite or there's no partner to be able to do that work, it might not be, it might be a mitigating, it might be a factor that just, prevents the repower. But for the most part, we go in saying, look, we want to try to find something that you're going to get at least 10 years of operation out of so that your value proposition works.
Absolutely. Okay, next question. How much of a backlog does UES currently have?
Right now, just touching on 75 vehicles for 2025, and growing. So,
Right. Let's see. Do you have existing dealers/partners in Texas?
so ABC is one of our partners, and they have operations in Grand Prairie. But we're open to discussions. ABC, handles a certain part of the repower. I think, I don't want to speak out of school, but I think there's a lot of opportunity in Texas. That's for sure.
Absolutely, yes. And this is a subject that we are passionate about as well at the Texas Electric School Bus Project. The next question is, I have a couple policy and financing oriented questions for Joe once we go through the ones above. So feel free to come off of mute if you would like, Kevin.
Hey, Jessica.
Hi, how are
Great.
you?
Yeah, thanks for letting me hop on because my questions are a little all over.
Absolutely.
But Joe, thanks for the great presentation. I work for the Connecticut Green Bank, and we just actually received our first set of electric school bus financing RFPs, which has been really exciting. And that's mainly braiding low interest green bank financing with the EPA Clean School Bus Program. So, but we're looking at all options to accelerate the market in Connecticut. And I just wanted to get from your perspective a sense of, on the policy and kind of review side, what's the process that you all have to go through when you enter a new state in terms of any sort of due diligence with the DMV or with other state agencies from a safety perspective, inspection perspective, anything like that?
Yeah, we'll work closely with the fleet to understand, what regulatory what they need to do. I mean, as an example, we were surprised. Some states has a central office. Here in New York, it's county by county, so it's completely different. So we understand what the lay of the land is, and then we basically present our design and our plan to that agency, get approval. They typically allow us, to build an initial article, deploy that vehicle, inspect the vehicle, and then rinse and repeat.
Got it. Perfect. And then you did mention that you all have turned into a bit of a bank, which is fun to hear. I was just curious on the kind of the max financing term that you all have seen, that either an operator or a school district has been willing to go up to finance the cost of the repowered school buses.
Yeah, so I didn't mean to misstate. So we don't want to be a bank.
Okay.
We've got some
Well, we can do
partners.
that instead.
Yeah. We don't want to be a bank, that's for sure. That's created a lot of problems for us, frankly. But so we've got some private third parties that want to come in and provide that funding. The size of the programs have to be at least 2.5 million or larger. At least 10 vehicles, with some infrastructure and whatnot. But we are always looking for creative financing, and the challenge a lot of times becomes new vehicles, old vehicles, municipal, private fleets. So the risk assessment's different, right? So based on that, we've run into some different challenges on trying to get that done. But volume speaks volumes. So typically, if the numbers are good, people seem to be wanting to find a way. And I think everyone's struggling with this a little bit. I think some of the newer programs, especially with EPA, new vehicle programs. I mean, you're starting to get some scale. So we're just hoping to crest that right now. But we're a ferry ride away, and I would love to come and talk to you guys in Connecticut. So
Sounds great. Yeah,
Awesome.
we can follow up. Just have one more for you, and then I'll hop off. Is just if you've seen any difference between either school districts or private bus operators in their willingness to adopt repowered ESPs.
the private fleets have been a little bit more, have a little bit better of an appetite for risk. A lot of the school districts, depending on how they operate, if they've got a contractor, they're going to be able to sort of, hand all that off, right, in terms of maintenance and support and service. A lot of the districts that own their own buses get a little bit more concerned, about that risk, a little bit more averse. Um, so I would say overall, the private fleets have been a little bit easier to work with, and that's just deal timing, but not in terms of once you're up and running, everybody's the same. So
Great. Well, that is the last question that's in the chat. So if anyone else has questions, now's your chance. All right, Susan, go ahead and come off mute.
Hello, Jessica and Michelle, and hi, Joe.
Nice to see
Nice
you,
to meet you.
Susan.
same here.
I'm in the central part of the country. I'm with Environmental Law and Policy Center. We've been working across the Midwest on getting electric school buses, and so far have not had many repowers. I know that there's been a big issue, and I'm hoping you could just talk about it, with the Clean School Bus Program not allowing repowers. Is there any progress that you see there in terms of working through whatever the issues are? The things that we hear have to do with safety, but I don't know if that's really it. And I'm just wondering if you could address this tricky question.
Yeah, so we admittedly have not spent a lot of time on this, and it's probably something that we could have or should have. But the way the programs are put together, in terms of some of their local requirements and things like that, it was the timing just wasn't good and friendly, for repowers. Now, as far as the reason, I can't speak for the EPA, but as I mentioned, I've been around for a while, and the EPA has really gotten burned, I would say, in the past, where um, I mean, I remember in the late 90s and mid 2000s, it was like the Wild West, for repowers and pickup trucks, vans. I mean, you name it, people were trying to repower stuff out of the garage. And I think to set the system and program up to do it on let's say a federal scale, it's probably more work they want to bite off. Again, I'm just assuming here, but um, on the flip side, I will say, I mean, the states are doing a lot of work here. I mean, NYSERDA and CARB, didn't just flip a switch and say, hey, Joe, you're a nice guy. We're gonna let you do a repower. There's been a lot of work involved there, so we think that work can be leveraged. This is, very important work, done with and careful work, with FMVSS and DOT and in each of the states. So, we think it's possible, but it's just, I guess, a matter of picking our battles at this point.
Makes sense. So we work from Ohio to Minnesota and all the states in between and are very eager to get repowers. Are there any states in the Midwest with whom you are currently working or looking to work or?
We're open. We've seen a couple RFQs come through. We're kind of focused on some of the larger states, but I mean, and with some of our partners, there's coverage, in different areas. So nothing at the moment, but we're happy to talk about it.
Some states in the Midwest do have non-VW funds still to spend. Both Michigan has a $125 million program and Minnesota has a $13 million program. So just wanted to put those on your radar.
Yeah, Minnesota, I've seen some. I think ABC is pitching some projects there. Michigan, I had no idea about. So I got to do my homework.
Anyway, glad to talk further. Thank you so much for your presentation. Really helpful.
Thank you, Susan. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Susan. And I didn't know about that Michigan program either. So, or at least the size of it. That's incredible. So thank you. The next question that we have here is, what is the typical warranty?
So most of the funding programs are putting a base in of at least 5 years. So we follow that. We offer 8 years and more, based on the application and what the fleet wants to do. So there could be a little bit of an adder, up front. We offer some service contracts, after the fact. The good news is this. Putting aside all, I've been, seen a lot of batteries over the years, but especially with lithium iron phosphate, for most of the suppliers, the results have been good, been really good. So I think that confidence to get the 10 to 12 year warranties is going to be there. And certainly our suppliers are supporting that. And then the other thing I also want to mention, we see this a lot with, not yet specifically with UPS, but UPS has got 10-mile routes and 100-mile routes, right? So even if you've got a battery that was, let's say, a 100-mile battery, and now it's only giving you 50, that battery is usable, and just like fleets move vehicles around the entire nation, you could do the same thing with a battery. But our base is 5 years, and we go up from there based on what the customer wants to do.
Yeah, and thank you for pointing that out, that there's a life after that 100-mile route. I think that's really important to consider. It's not always thought about. And so, Brett, did that answer your question, or is there a question that you'd like to add on? I'm going to take that as it answered his question. But feel free to hop on here, Brett, if you have a further question. And then the last question that I see here, oh, Brett says we're good. What battery sizes are you offering currently?
There's 60 kilowatt hour increments. So 60, 120, 180, 240 starts to push it on a school bus, but it is possible.
Great. Well, that is the last question that I have here. Anyone who has a last minute question, feel free to hop it in the chat or speak up now. But if not, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Joe, for an excellent presentation and a wonderful question and answer session. I really appreciate all of the excellent questions that allow us to dig deeper into this subject. Joe has put his contact information up here on the screen. You can always reach out to Joe. You can always reach out to myself or Michelle, Jessica at texaselectricschoolbusproject.org, Michelle at texaselectricschoolbusproject.org. We're always happy to talk more and connect you with the people who you need to talk to. So thanks again, Joe. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Jessica. I really appreciate the opportunity, and thanks for everybody's participation. It's really neat. Thank you.